Hello and welcome to this story behind the stories, your weekly look at the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. I'm Eoin Devereux, news and sports reporter with the Banner Press, welcoming you once again to the show. Appreciate you taking a little bit of your time and spending it right here with us. Joined this week by Casper Wehrhahn. Casper, good to have you here.
Good to be here again, and thank you everyone once again for joining us.
And we got a few items to cover this week, and a few of them related to some of the activities here in Neepawa on a global sense. Of course, the war in Ukraine is ongoing as we speak, as we record this, and the outpouring of support from not only different nations throughout the globe, but different communities throughout the world has been amazing to see, and that has occurred right here in Neepawa as well. Front page of our paper, a prayer vigil was recently held at the Baptist Ukrainian Catholic Church that is here in Neepawa, just on the north end, if you're unfamiliar with it. It was wonderful to see, and I'll admit, Kira Patterson went and took pictures of that and got some of the information. I've never been inside that church whatsoever because, again, our Ukrainian Catholic sort of demographic is not very large anymore here in town. It's not used on a weekly basis, but it's still used every couple weeks for services. But I was so thoroughly impressed, first off, with the support. Just over 100 people were there, but also just the interior of it. It's so beautiful in there.
It is, yeah. Just looking at the details, sort of on the ceiling there and along the trim, it's very beautiful, very well kept building. And yeah, like you said, it was just very nice to see the support that is being shown, both from the Ukrainian faith community and people in and around Neepawa, trying to help people over in Ukraine as well.
That's right. As we said, there were just over 100 people that came out for this prayer service. It's wonderful to see individuals from other religious denominations and even those who aren't spiritual, from what I've heard, went out there as well. Because there are those who are not as spiritual, other generations, other individuals. Like, I'll admit myself, I'm not an extremely spiritual individual, but I still want to support those in any way, shape, or form. And to see all these people in our community come together for this was very heartwarming. And they supported it in a financial sense as well. There was a collection for the humanitarian effort in Ukraine, and an impressive amount brought in. $3,180 was given from the service here in Neepawa. And again, considering that the Ukrainian Catholic sort of demographic here in town is so small, that is so amazing to see that number.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's similar to numbers that we're actually going to see in our next story coming up. But yeah, just whether it's just getting together and, showing some solidarity or putting in money donations or supplies, it's just been really incredible. I know we've talked a bit about that on last week's show as well, but it really is just outstanding to see people come together like this, especially considering how big and how anxiety inducing it is, because it's a very serious thing that's going on.
If you'd like to see those pictures, there's the main picture on the front page and additional pictures on page 19 of this week's edition of the Banner Press. Please pick up a physical copy of it anywhere in Neepawa and surrounding communities. If you're not located here, though, or if you're unable to get out there and get that physical representation of it, you can find it. A digital copy is available on mywestman.ca. So hopefully you'll be able to support us in one capacity or another. Speaking of supports as well, this was a really nice story. Akira was able to get this story in regards to some fundraising going on for Ukraine, but it wasn't here in Neepawa, actually, Casper. It was out in, I believe, in Minnedosa.
It was, yeah. There was actually a few different people that were doing this. I highlight a few spots in the story here to keep my notes together, but yeah, there was the initial sort of fundraiser, I guess you could say, done up by, and I apologize if I mispronounce names. I do unfortunately only know one language fluently, which happens to be English. But it was started by Katerina and Alexander Bugai of Minnedosa, and they were bringing together supplies, just, pharmaceuticals, et cetera, et cetera. There's a good list in there of what they were gathering. And sending it over to Ukraine through something that they've used before to send stuff to family, because they do have family over there. I believe it's called Meast, which I admit I'm not familiar with at all. This is my first time hearing about it, so it's interesting reading about that as well. But they got like 300 kilograms of supplies to send over there, and a bunch of money donations as well was gathered by Kiana Tournier and Stella Woodcock of Minnedosa. They got $3,187.50 in monetary donations, which is going towards that as well. And they also brought in 200 kilograms of the supplies that the other family is sending over as well. And that first family did get monetary donations too, which the primary focus for that is going to be covering the cost of sending it over there, because it's like $5 per kilogram, I think it was.
Yeah.
So pretty expensive. And then the rest of that, whatever's left over after covering that cost, is going to be given to the Ukrainian army.
But it's very important as well. Every little bit helps. These are dollars that they desperately need in their time of need. And to see individuals step up in these ways. And we got to remember, this is just in Neepawa, in Minnedosa, in outlying communities. Imagine an entire nation doing that, because that's what Canada's doing right now. An entire globe doing that, because there's so many other nations that are seeing the need and doing these same things on a grassroots level. It's inspiring. It really is inspiring. And we're very happy to be able to bring our local version of that to you. These are the types of stories we just love to be able to share with you. Some of it's a little dry, some of it's a little numbers, dollars and cents type things, municipal things, provincial things. Those are the important day-to-days you need to learn, true. But these stories right here are the ones that I think a lot of times get us a little amped up, I think.
Yeah, it's like we've said before, it's certainly very inspiring to see these. I mean, I don't recall how old the kids are here in this story, but they're fairly young kids, and I remember reading in it that they were just like talking after school one day, I believe it was, and they're just like, well, we kind of want to do something to like help with this, because it's quite the injustice that's going on, and they really just got right to it. And I know that, like you said before, Eoin, stuff like this is happening like all across the globe, and even though it's like in the moment it's just like one or two people doing one thing, it really adds up. Like with what the church did here, and of course these groups in Minnedosa, like that's a lot already, and that's just like two different initiatives there, really. Yeah.
Now, if you'd like to learn more, you can find that story in its entirety on page 2 of this week's edition of the Banner Press. There's been a lot of focus on this on our paper the last 2 weeks, and in many media over the last couple of weeks, because it is a notable ongoing occurrence. Quite honestly, it's something that's put a lot of stress on a lot of people globally. You're too young to remember this, but I lived through the Cold War. I was a child of the 80s, so I remember sort of the tensions between the United States and the then Soviet Union. I'm not saying we're there again, but we're closer than we've been in a good 20 to 30 years. It's a little unusual to sort of be reliving these types of tensions between two major powers on the global stage.
I can imagine, yeah, and I know, of course, there's been conflicts ongoing during my lifetime already, but this is sort of going to be like the first one likely that I will probably like significantly remember,
Yeah.
just because I'm old enough to. But yeah, it's pretty big, and I can only hope that it turns out all right, or well, as all right as it can, I suppose.
Yeah, and again, giving out prayers, and if you're not a spiritual person, the best wishes to the people of Ukraine, and again, I don't think this part is controversial, but to the people of Russia. Because there's a lot of citizens in Russia that are dealing with this as well, that have no control of the circumstances of their government and are being, in my estimation, sort of lied to or not told the entire truth by their government on this. But again, let's be honest, not to turn into a conspiracy theorist, but what government ever tells all its citizens the truth? Not many in the grand scheme of things. But there's a lot of people that are just being washed over on this tide, and it's so unfortunate, and I hope that we can find some understanding and get past this sooner rather than later. But let's focus on a few more positive things, and a very positive thing right here in the town of Neepawa. Every year in and around this time, the town council for the town of Neepawa goes through some of its items as they get ready for the budget deliberations. And part of that usually is dealing with what is a surplus under normal circumstances each and every year for their, first off, for their general operating fund. Every year they sort of come up with a game plan of where their money is going to be spent, what they need to be spending on, and how much they need to set aside. And on a normal occasion, they don't spend it all. They're able to put a little bit of that surplus into next year's budget. Normally, Casper, it's in and around $200,000, $250,000 a year that they've been able to save up. They've done some smart things with, and they're able to put back in. And this year, holy cow! Either they sort of were very thrifty, or they were very smart with their spending, because they're taking $1.73 million and putting it back into their general operating fund. That's an amazing amount. And the thing is on that is that it was fortuitous for a couple of reasons. The reason it's so much more than normal is that they, well, sold off a bunch of land on the CN property. That brought in a bunch of money. And as well, some new property taxes. I mean, there's a lot of development going on. That means new revenue streams. That means new property being put out there. So the town was able to bring in more on that. And what does that mean for you? You might be wondering, what's the big deal? What that means for you is, if you're a property owner, if you own a house, if you own some land here in Neepawa, every year, budget comes around, there's that little increase. Maybe you stay status quo in terms of property taxation. Maybe it's a bump of 2% one year. Maybe it's a bump of 0.5%. This year, there's that distinct possibility. No property tax increase. Maybe even it goes down. I'm not putting words in the town council's mouth. I'm not saying things are going to happen. But if they want to sort of give a couple bucks back to a few people, I'm sure they wouldn't mind it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And regarding the amount, I admit I was proofreading the story the other day before it went to print, and it just kind of like blew me away, honestly. Like it took me off guard. I wasn't expecting it to be that much. I was just like, is this an error? No.
Nope.
No, it's not. It is actually that much. So it's pretty cool to see that. Because Neepawa has been growing in a few different areas, just for the reasons that you listed in the story there. So it's like not surprising, but still surprising at the same time, if that makes sense. It really got me.
And again, the other item is the utility operating. Those are more the nuts and bolts, the meat and potatoes of running a town each year. That surplus was around $205,000, more in line with what you see each and every year in Neepawa. So that's the good indicator. $200,000, $205,000 in the utility. That's where we're normally at. So 1.7, holy cow. Hopefully, I was talking Casper, I was talking the other day at the Neepawa Titans game with Wayne, who calls the games for NAC TV. And he was saying, you know what? It'd be nice, 1.7. Hopefully they'll put it towards one or two things like, I don't know, maybe upgrades to the arena. I know they don't own the arena. That's still one of the quirks of the town of Neepawa. They do not own the Yellowhead Center. They do not own or operate the golf course. They do not own or operate the curling club. The only thing they really own and operate is the swimming pool. And there are going to be some huge upgrades to the swimming pool this year, but if they want to kick in a couple bucks to keep that arena going for a little bit, I don't think anybody would be complaining too much.
Yeah, and I know it's been around for quite some time. It's been a while since I looked.
It's so old, it's older than me. It's that old.
Yeah, I know it's been some time since I looked at the history, so I don't have exact dates or anything. But yeah, it's been around for quite a while now. So if some dollars were kicked in there, maybe just tucked over, it would be good for some upgrades for sure.
Because again, you just got to look down the road to Minnedosa. They're starting to build a brand new arena for their community. It's not a big. It's a nice arena. It's going to be a nice arena, but it's still like 20 some odd million. And I don't think Neepawa wants to cut that check for a new arena anytime soon. I don't think anybody would want to cut a check like that for any time soon.
Yeah, it's a hefty chunk of money. It is.
So a couple $100,000 maybe here or there to extend the life of the arena. I'm just, I'm not saying. I'm just saying. For any town of Neepawa individuals watching this right now, just saying.
Just a friendly nudge, just a little suggestion, right?
Exactly. But that is great news for the town of Neepawa, and ultimately it's going to be great news for each and every property owner in the town of Neepawa as well, because I believe it is going to trickle down to them. A little bit more from town council's most recent meeting. There weren't many big ticket items of note to talk about this time, but one of the items they were discussing is they were requesting more volunteers for the fire department. With the expansion, the new building of the fire department, there's new opportunities. So they're hoping some young, able-bodied individuals might be interested. So I guess that leaves me out. I am neither young, and as you heard, anytime I get up from my chair and make that groaning noise, I'm not that able-bodied anymore either.
The joints are creaking.
Yeah. Man, what was that snapping sound? That can't be good.
Oh, it was Eoin. Oh, well. Do you need anything over there?
Well, maybe some oil or something for these joints. I don't know. But yeah, they're asking for volunteers on that. And one other item, Park Lake update. They've been doing some great work. First phase of getting it back to its former glory. The bridge construction tender, it closed on the 7th. A decision on that is expected in the very near future, and we will have that information for you when it is officially official. The riprap, which is sort of that base for the shorelines, for bridges, to keep erosion from being an issue, that's been completed. A lot of work went into that the last little while, so it's great to see as well. The trees that were washed away from the flooding, those have been cleared out. It's fantastic that all this progress is being made, especially in the middle of winter. You think of a project like that, that'd be a spring, summer thing, but they're getting ahead of it right now, and that means it's going to be back to its former glory sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of people are likely excited for. And of course, with the bird sanctuary, where it is, that sort of is like their go-to source of water for certain things. And of course, there's aquatic animals there that, or semi-aquatic, I should say, that like to swim in the lake there. So they'll be very happy to get their swimming spot back.
That's right. All right, now let's talk about this feature that you have, Casper. You've done some work on this, and it was kind of interesting. I mean, as I was reading through it there, just from a historic context, you came across some, and you were given sort of the opportunity to go through a very interesting catalog, some historic item for Canada.
Yeah, it was very interesting here. I admit the story ended up being longer than I had initially intended, but things just kind of go that way sometimes when you're really into a subject. But hopefully I don't lose anybody with it, because it is a fascinating story. But Linda Ford from Neepawa here had called up Christine, Ken's wife, and said, "Hey, I have this catalog. Like, would you all be interested in maybe taking a look and doing a story on it?" And so we had her bring it in on, I believe it was March 5th. I got to take a look at it just a few days before we had to get things in the paper. And it had a very nice cover. We do have a color photo on page 9 there in the full paper. Once you pick that up, you can take a look at it. But it's just a fascinating piece. Beautiful cover, like I said. But it is sort of a memorabilia piece that was made up in 1970 by a book company that is based out of Toronto, or was based out of Toronto. I don't know if it's still around now. But it was in collaboration with the T. Eaton Company, for very commonly known as Eaton's. And it was all pages from the original 1901 catalogs. So everything inside the book is all those original pages that were given to the book company to make this from the Eaton's archives. And it's just fascinating. I had a good look through it there. And the different sort of like diagrams that they had in there to showcase the different products and the variety of different products as well. For people that are unfamiliar, they sold like pretty much everything that you can think of. Some things that you probably wouldn't think that they would sell, Eoin.
Yeah.
Like houses, I was absolutely baffled to find out they used to sell houses through Eaton's. And I'm just like, I didn't expect a retail store to ever do that. But
and at fair prices as well.
Apparently so, yeah. And like this was a very big company. It was started by Northern Irish immigrants to Canada, and they did their first store December 1896. So very long history here, and eventually it sort of expanded from its place out in Toronto to eventually have one just 2 hours away from us in Winnipeg, I believe. 1905 it was. That's on page 17. I don't have that one open, but yeah, very long history, very fascinating history too. And yeah, again, just seeing the variety in there and the different prices as well. I wasn't able to use a whole lot of photos here just because of our space. We have so many good stories in the paper this week, but
let me ask you this, Casper. Do you have other pictures in the archive, though, right? You've got them saved?
I have a few. I scanned a couple different pages. I did have to give the book back, of course, after I was done with it. But I did get a couple different scans, so we could potentially feature some more.
What would be interesting is, I think definitely, we'll throw this on Ken there, is to sort of feature those pages in upcoming editions. Even though the story itself is done and available in this week's edition of the Banner Press, I think it'd still be interesting. I'd be very fascinated to sort of see the layout of the pages in their entirety in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, we can't do it on a full page, but still a large sort of, we'll find a spot, I think, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I only grabbed a few. I wanted to be very sort of tender and caring with the book, of course, because it was actually in very good condition, and I wanted to keep it that way, so I was nervous about taking too many scans. But the layout of the pages was very sort of like neat, and again, the array of diagrams they had was fascinating as well.
Yeah. And that was such a big part of Canada in its formative years, and even through into the times where we think the modern times. Because when I was a child, up north in northern Manitoba, the Eaton's catalog and the Hudson Bay Company catalog were big deals. I mean, that's where you did a lot of your shopping because you weren't able to get everything up north. So it was still, even into the 70s and 80s, a big part of Canada's legacy. So, yeah, great job on that.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. It's I had a wonderful time working with Linda there and doing my own research on it as well. And I was sort of intrigued as well, I'll say quickly before we move on here, that I was fascinated to learn that it was still around like a few years after I was born. Like it was around until 1999.
Yeah.
And that was due to a few factors. They had to declare bankruptcy there because of just some criticisms that was garnered to the company over the years. And then, of course, there was this really strong opposition from Sears Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, in and around that time as well, Walmart really stepped up its game in Canada. And quite honestly, yeah, Walmart, because I used to, in the 90s, back in my younger days, you'd go to Winnipeg to visit with people, and the Eaton's building was still a full-fledged store, like multi-tiered. It was fully stocked. Same with the Hudson Bay Company store. It was a full, you'd go in there and you'd see everything. It was like, wow, this is the fancy store. And maybe it's my fault. I never bought anything from any of there because it was always a little too pricey. But, it was still nice to look at it.
Yeah, and that's actually exactly what I read as well, is that the stores were, like, very well furnished. Like, I sort of got the impression that it wasn't really supposed to be, like, a retail store, but it'd be, like, this, like, high-class, like,
Yep.
fancy restaurant or something. Just blew me away that it was described like that.
One other thing as well, raised up in Thompson, and we had the 2 malls up there. We were actually one of the first cities in Canada to have malls. Fascinating fact. And one of them did have the Hudson Bay, and they used to have this dining area. That was a fancy dining area. You'd go in there, you'd get your food, you'd sit down. There were chandeliers, like velvet and stuff everywhere. Like, you wouldn't think something like that would exist, but they took it very seriously, even in a place 750 kilometers north of here.
Definitely sounds like a big step up from your general, like, sort of IKEA cafeteria.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. It's a little unfortunate that has sort of gone away, but that's the sign of the times, and that's just the way it is. But it's nice to be able to look back at it a little bit. We're running a little low on time right now. Just a quick shout out then. We received several submissions recently from teams in Neepawa minor hockey, the U11 female team that won their provincials. Congratulations to them. We've got a full story that was submitted by them about the year that was on page 12. We also have pictures and a cut line of the U13 girls team, the Neepawa Titans, who brought home a bronze medal from a recent event, the Manitoba Provincials in Elkhorn. Congratulations to them. Just wanted to quickly give them a shout out. There's so many other things we could talk about, but we are a little short on time, and that's why you're going to have to pick up a physical copy of the Banner Press and discover them for yourself. Now, you can find them anywhere here in Neepawa or in surrounding communities. And again, if you have a story suggestion for us, anything whatsoever, we'd love to hear from you. You can contact us here at the Banner Press at 476-3401. Or you can contact us via email at news@neepawabanner.com. Any sports-related stuff you can send to sports@neepawabanner.com. Very appreciative of that as well. I'd love to get out to every single event. I can't, unfortunately, but very appreciative of you helping us out. Like the U11 and the U13, that's an example of that. You helped us out. There's also a story about the Neepawa Figure Skating Club in this week's paper. Very appreciative of them. They're going to be having their actual showcase, year-end showcase, coming up later this month at the Yellowhead Center. Keep an eye out for that. I'm sure it's going to be in the paper, and I'm sure a version of it's going to be appearing right here on NAC TV. So once again, Casper, thank you very much for coming on the show and walking us through some of these stories.
Good to be here once again, and I look forward to sitting on sometime in the future.
And thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you taking your time and sharing it with us each and every week, right here on NAC TV for the Neepawa Banner Press's Stories Behind the Stories. Have a good week.